thank you so much for making the trip down here.
Yeah, no problem.
From Fernandina. That's sometimes it's a haul a little bit.
It can be. If you get lucky and hit the ferry just perfectly, might save a couple minutes. But besides that, I always ignore the 5 o'clock push, and it always hits me. So
oh man,
that's part of it though. No big deal.
Well, I'm excited you're here. You are one of my truly favorite photographers in like the Jacksonville community. We have a lot of them.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And I was wondering, how did you get into photography? Like, what sparked this interest? Because you're very passionate about it, I would say.
Yeah, I am. I'm very driven into my hobbies and into my interest since, from the time I was a little kid. When I went into something, it just encapsulated me. And I would say 10 years ago, it was music for me. Was just I was into guitar and recording, and anything in that world just completely drove me. And I dig in every aspect, and I really loved in music. I loved this kind of an overlay between technology and art, because as equipment got better, knowing how to work your equipment became really important. And but you couldn't just, you had to have some creativity. You had to have another side, a passionate side, a part where you're relating to people. And I found that really, I just loved it. It was the first hobby that I don't even call it a hobby, but the first thing that I just felt like inside and just really comfortable. And, but when I got married, we were going to take the first big trip for me was like my first trip to Hawaii. And I was like, I want pictures. I don't even know what I'm doing with the camera. I've always enjoyed like photography, but I'd always been into it, but I knew that I didn't know what I was doing. Like I knew anytime I picked up a good camera, I didn't know what all that was.
Yeah.
So, I was like, I want to learn. I don't know when the next trip like this will be. And, so I just decided to self-learn all that right then. And I'm not happy with very many of the pictures from that trip, but they're, it's a lot better. There's a couple that I see what I was trying to do, and I was starting to get control and starting to have, control of the light and being able to take pictures in front of a sunset where, me and my wife weren't completely just blown out by a background, or the background wasn't completely blown out by the flash and things like that. And it started to interest me to a level that I started to feel kind of like that same kind of overlap. Like I got the technology here, which has always been an interest to me, but there's also, the other side that I probably didn't dig into too much yet. But then I had my daughter 8 years ago, and that was like the same kind of like thing just pushed me like, you got to learn how to take these pictures. You know what I mean? These are moments. These are moments that are moving on.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. My dad was very, fond of cameras and shooting when I was a kid. And to the point that, I think that just probably meant something to me. Like I need to be capturing this too. I love seeing those pictures when I'm a kid. Yeah. And now it's like, we don't even need film. You don't even need to limit it to this, 24 or 36 shots. You can just have this whole generation and see these things. And, but really it was as I started going with that, I started exploring and finding the boundaries and it was just course after course that I could take. I was taking online courses. I was YouTubing it. Just every book, every magazine that were, actually still popular at the time, all those things. And it was just like anything I could do to feed that interest level. And it became huge to me. And I was actually living in Chicago at the time. And then I've lived in Florida 3 times in my life.
That's interesting.
And yeah.
Oh, wait, because you went to Florida.
Yeah.
That's right.
I originally, I went to the University of Florida, and I moved home, and I came back down for school again, and I went back to Chicago. And then, yeah, when I had my daughter, I just started looking around, and we brought her down here once, and I was just so I could see how happy she was. And just that was like the kind of outdoor life that I wanted my kids to have. And I think it's a lot harder now to have to raise children. I'm fully supportive of them learning how that generation's going to be, because I think that generation, if they want to be on screens, that's going to be part of their life. I don't want them to not know what that's like. It's not like, learn all your online stuff, learn all your, digital relationships and all those things like that. That's how it is. People aren't going to be asking for phone numbers when they're in high school. They're going to be asking for screen names, or, what's your Instagram, or what, right. It's not going to be, let me get your phone number. These are, the social structure is going to be different, and I'm not going to force my generation on that. But having said that, I still, it's never going to be, it's never going to be too advanced to not enjoy going outside. And that's why we came down here. And I really got into being out at the beach. And then we had this waterproof camera, and I just took it out one day, and there was these kids that were surfing down the street. And I was like, oh man, I gotta get some shots. And it was like the first time I came back, and I was like, this is amazing. It was just a completely different world. I mean, different in every way, as far as like the impact. Shooting in the water specifically for me felt so different, because it finally felt like I was separating those photos from some, if you want to share a photo, I was kind of like, this is different. You haven't seen, you've seen in the water photos, but it was, and it's definitely getting more popular now. But I think that just taking out that camera wasn't even really made for it. But it, not long after that, I got a housing, and then just away we went.
Yeah,
it was just super driven to, I don't know. There's something about being out there where maybe being for years living in Illinois, and having come back from Florida, and having already lived there. And I used to live at the beach in Daytona, just actually in Port Orange there. And I lived across the street from the water. And it was like when I moved back up to Chicago, I just missed it so much. And I was going online and seeing these pictures of my friends or just people out in the water. And all of a sudden I was able to do those same kind of things, take those same kind of pictures, share them. And it just started from there. It was just, it replaced all the music, which worked out perfectly, because when you have a baby, you can't be playing, like you can't be cranking the amps up anymore, and things like that. And it was like this just perfect natural little step into this next segment. And the only thing scary about that is I don't know, like sometime down the line I might just be doing something completely different, but that's what life is for. So
that's something that I can definitely relate to. I've always been known to try different hobbies and like really dive into them and just kind of figure out what it is I like. But you've had a pretty long length of doing photography at a high level. Have you always been a creative person? Like when you were younger, did you consider yourself creative?
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely loved art from the time. I mean, my older brother and older sister, were great artists. I mean, just at drawing, we're talking when I'm a kid, that's when I'm saying art, that's what I'm thinking of for the most part. Obviously encapsulates a lot more, but just watching them draw was like, I love drawing, and I still do. I don't put that drive into it. It's still enjoyable though. It's still fun just to doodle around. But I've always, I was in art through school, but I hadn't found my medium that really resonated.
Didn't really click with you.
Well, yeah. I mean, I could see kids in my class that had that knack, that had that skill set, where it was like my drawings, I could put my work in, and sometimes I was happy, but looking back now, they never brought me the kind of like connection that certain photos where I'm like, oh man, I'm so excited to be like, just looking at my own thing that I took. It's
big feeling of satisfaction.
Yeah. So I think it was there from when I was young, but it took a while to and I'm still figuring it out. I mean, there's there's weeks or months where I'm like, I can't stand any of this, any of these
pictures,
any of my own. It's crazy. Like, and you like want to just delete everything and be like, oh, what am I, why am I doing it this way? But I think that's healthy. I think it's good.
I think most artists are their toughest critics, and they probably majority all go through that feeling of, I hate all of this. Like, I need to delete it all.
I was listening to, I don't know, like I try to stay current with music, and I'm not going to be able to name it, but it was one of the younger pop stars. And she was saying something about songwriting, and she was like, a song doesn't have to be like, I don't have to love what I wrote 10 years ago. Like, writing songs is about that moment right there. So I try to preserve and have the posterity of it, and to be like, that's what I really liked then. And maybe again, it'll come around where I enjoy that. So
that's a really good way of looking at that. It's interesting.
But yeah, it's hard sometimes, Yeah. Look at especially when you put a lot of creative, like, I don't consider myself a journalistic photographer in most cases. Sometimes I do that kind of work for people, but for the most part, I'm trying to create as much as I would say digital art, and create, push the limits in different ways that, so there's a lot of my own personal taste and emotion in those things. So those aren't always going to feel comfortable.
Yeah, and that leads me to my next question, because your editing style is the most easy to spot in a lineup. Like, if I looked at 100 pictures, like, I would know which ones yours are every time. And I think most people here would too, just because you have a very distinctive way you edit your pictures. And I was wondering, where does that come from? Like, does that come from living in like Chicago? Like, where is that from?
I probably I'm long-winded, obviously, so I can hear myself talking forever on these kind of subjects, because they're good questions, and they really make me. I'm answering them as you send them to me here. It's I really got to kind of analyze those things, but probably, when I was in Chicago, I was shooting concert photography, and I got into that, and I was more or less just finding like the bands that I liked the most at the time. And my cousin was playing in a band in Chicago at the time, and it kind of snowballed a little bit. It was pretty cool, because they opened for a couple of bands that gave an open door to like get down in the pit and shoot the opener band, but then I'd hang around and shoot the bigger band. And once you had that like ticket with them, I'd send those photos out, get in touch with them, and then the next time they came around, or other acts, I could be like, here's some shots of these guys, and the doors just opened like really fast to a lot of really fun experiences. And that probably is that's probably a big foundation of what I brought to like my surf and ocean photography, because on stage, those guys, I mean, it's made to be dramatic. It's the ultimate, it's literally the stage. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, it's what they're doing. It's dramatic lights. It's everything is supposed to just feel larger than life. The whole production is put there to impress the viewer. And then when you're down in the pit shooting that, I'm trying to capture that, and then I'm taking it home and I'm trying to recreate that same like huge punch and
that feeling.
Yeah. And I just connected that, and I learned that was like probably the first big genre that I got into is like concert photography. And I think that that's where I started making that connection of, or disconnecting a little bit, because I remember being down in those pits, and I wasn't working for a newspaper, and the photojournalists that were there they'd rush you out of there at a certain time. A lot of times it'd be like, you can shoot for the first three songs, and then you got to leave. And they'd take you out, and those guys would be uploading like right then to their sources or whatever, if they're going to be in a local local paper or something next day, or an online or a blog or something like that, they were uploading, and I almost felt like I didn't know what I was doing. I'm like, I'm not sending this to anybody. I'm taking this home. And I'm giving them to the band, which was really cool. Like, but I didn't want to give them just like these snapshots. I wanted to like, make it feel like huge. I wanted like movie posters. I wanted these things to feel like they came out of like some wild film. Just I was really into like what made cinematic, the tones in cinema, and, super cliche, but like, like the Matrix like has these big green overtones. In really hot places it's always really warm over, yellow shading and things like that. And I started seeing how you can control these natural emotions that people have when they view video and photos, just based on the colors and and those kind of things. And color theory started to become important. But that's what I wanted to deliver to those bands. And they, for the most part, the response was awesome. And I think, to this day, I still have a good connection with, some of these, some bands out there, because when they see these photos, they're getting stuff that they want to share. And they want to share the concert that they were at every night. They need that kind of stuff coming in. So when it came to being out in the water, I had this dramatic light. They were kind of similar. You're not in control in either of those. The hardest thing in concert photography is it's low light, and then it's blasts of like super bright light, and you don't control any of the light. You don't control any of the movement. You can't be like, come back over here. Like, these lead singers, they'll come over and, they'll grab their drink and they'll throw it into the crowd. And there's like all this light blasting out, and you're like, do it again. You don't have that chance. You got to be on the ball. You got to be like, literally you're in a pit with guys on, both sides of you. And you're just, it feels, there's some continuity between that and surf photography. So totally. I think that's probably one of the starts of where, like, being dramatic, like when I just first started doing those kind of things, I brought those same techniques over, and now you're, instead of concert lights and spotlights, you're using the sun and the sunsets and things like that. But, what you were saying about being recognizable is probably, it's an amazing compliment. And it means a lot to me, because going back to like music, like the guys I respected were the ones, like, especially in guitar playing, that you could recognize before you knew who the band was. Like, you hear certain guitar solos and you're like, I know who that is. Like, they don't have to say anything. It's the way they play. And it doesn't matter what equipment they're playing on. It's not a specific guitar. Certain singers, things like that, you can just hear that like vibrato, or you can hear just the aggressiveness that they put things with. And I was at this Mason Jennings concert, and I was talking to him after the show, and he's kind of got a little bit folky thing going on, acoustic guitar player. And it really sounded like Bob Dylan to me a little bit. And I asked him, I'm like, how'd you get this like Bob Dylan inflection? Like, how do you do, like, what brought you to that? And it just almost the same kind of question. And he was like, I don't know, I just do it. Like, he's like, it's just when I sing, that's how it sounds. So there is definitely a part of me that, like, even when I go into something, like, I'll see these beautiful, like, airy photos where it's like really light tones, pastels, light blues, light, like pink skies and lower saturation. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, I love that. And I'll sit down and I'll be like, I'm going to make that. And then it comes out and it's like, it's all just this like crazy cinematic doom scene where it's like the surfers surviving like apocalypse. And I'm like, well, how do we get here? But it's me. So that's
funny.
That's where it is. So no matter what I do, it's like, it comes out like that. I gotta back it down when I edit the kids' photos. My children, my baby's pictures don't look like that. But besides that, it's I don't know. It just goes that way. So
that's interesting. And I think as photographers progress and do it longer and they edit more, like, they definitely start to create a way that they shoot certain images. Like Clark Little, like, you can tell all of his shots kind of too. Just, I mean, also because he's like standing in like crazy.
Yeah, I mean, he sends it. So I mean, he's there's both parts of it. I mean, he's willing to put himself right there,
right?
And so just for him, the composition and the angle is going to be like, there's only, so many people doing that.
Right.
There's a lot more now, partially because of him, but
well, he inspired Evan Hilton. That's why Evan does surf photography, which is,
he inspired everybody. I mean,
yeah, he's awesome.
I mean, he was like the first guy I knew that like boomed on Instagram with like, whoa, these water shots are, what is happening,
Yeah.
And even himself, like when you hear his testimonials about it, was just like, I can do that. Like, I'm just going to, I don't know if you've ever heard his whole story.
It's
but
pretty funny.
Yeah. It's like, I'm going to grab that camera. I'm going to go in there.
Why not?
I'm not buying a photo of that. I'm going to make my own. And
that's such a great way of getting into it, I think.
Just, go after it.
And speaking of Instagram, so I'm sure like you've noticed like how much content is like needed nowadays. Like you have to constantly be pushing out content. And I was wondering, does that change the way that you post? Does it change the way you shoot, your workflow? Has Instagram changed you as a photographer?
No, it definitely has changed me because, and that's not wrong. The industries change, the people that are inside that. I'm going to say influencers, but in any industry, I'm not talking about the current day influencer, but the influencers of an industry are always affected. And so there are things but I don't think it necessarily changes. I don't know. That's a tough question. I think everybody's going to play to their audience a little bit. If you go out on stage every day and it's, you're never playing the hits that people want to hear, and then you finally come out and play them, and people, you have to listen to that because that's part of your survival. That's part of your relevancy to be a part of things. And it's also, I think for a lot of artists, I think that's also just part of the connection. I mean, it's the feedback. I want to hear, like, it means something to me when people love something. And I don't think it doesn't have to be demonized. Like, oh, everyone's always like, oh, you're just out for likes. Why do you need those likes and things like that? But it's not always that superficial. I think that there is a response when you've put time into an experience and you share something and people are writing genuine comments and they're getting back to you and saying, you're getting this positive response. I don't know how to not let that affect you. I think it's going to, and I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of, honestly. Like, having said that, like, I still have standards. I'm not going to, exploit anything and I try not to be, I think one of the, I can't believe how many things I want to reference to music, but it is what it is. I mean, it's music's still important to me. And, guys like Neil Young, the first time you listen to somebody like that, you can be like, how is this guy a singer? Like I was almost like repulsed by his voice when I first listened to him. I just couldn't, and again, like Bob Dylan, like some of these older people that you listen to and you're like, how is this guy famous? Why? And it's because they're genuine. I mean, you don't have to be a great singer. You have to be genuine, and you don't have, in all of art, people just want honesty. So I can't go out on a limb and create things that aren't from my heart, even if it would be more popular on Instagram. I have to stay to that core of the things that, probably in the most, the hopeful theme that I have in a lot of photography is I want to share people's connection with the ocean and people's enjoyment. And and sometimes it's just their people's enjoyment in general or the enjoyment of photography, but I'm trying to share those things, and I'm not going to chase too far down that hole, but it definitely affects. It definitely influences. And especially when, you start straddling the lines of business and things like that, I want to be viable. This is a real business for me. And there are people that come to me to provide services to them. And I have to be connected. Like I want to know what's reaching people right now.
Right.
Like when TikTok started a year ago or 2 years ago, whenever the first push was, I unfortunately didn't take it serious, and the amount of reach the photographers and people that did, it's amazing. It's great for them, But I know that that's something going forward. I do a lot of product photography on the side and things like that. I know that's important. I want to have more reach. So like just today, I put my first YouTube video up. I started, and I'm trying to differentiate. It's not going to be repeats of Instagram, but I want to have tutorials going out on TikTok and on YouTube because I think that's the proper format for them. I think that's a place that they can thrive, and I want to make it really, short. But so yeah, that's influencing me. I would never be creating those on my own and trying to sell like, order my DVD with my tutorial, but I'm trying to be viable. I'm trying to give, people a place they can reach. And then I also want to make myself marketable to other people that if you want to reach and we have a really good relationship on something that I can support, then, so.
Yeah. And also these platforms and being on multiple platforms, I feel like it helps stay relevant too. And I feel like in today's world where since we have so many options of social media platforms, not everyone's going to be on all of them and they're not going to devote all their time to them. So if you as an artist have yourself in bits of all of them, then you can reach a lot more people and then you're relevant, and that can help, especially on a business side.
Yeah. And I don't have any allegiance to a certain form. Honestly, the photographer in me despises all of them. I mean, none of them cater to the photographer. None of them care, things, the apps and the sites that were built for photographers like Flickr and 500 pics. I mean, they're not relevant. Yeah. I can't put my artwork on 500 pics and expect to sell prints. That's not where people are going to look at them anymore. No. Flickr is not a place I can't be like, oh, check out my Flickr gallery and the print orders are going to come in. It's not viable. So now that I don't have those options, everything is photographers and a lot of artists are just jumping through loopholes to make these social media platforms that are really just about advertising. That's how they're surviving, that you don't pay to be a member of any of these things. Yeah. And so it's all about ad revenue. They're trying to find ways to somehow fit genuine art into that algorithm. And, they don't give you any heads up on how to make it work. They don't give you any tools to make things, there's no outline of, what kind of, as a photographer on Instagram, they won't even tell you what the best format to upload is. They won't tell you like, hey, this is the file size, this is the format. If it's going to be compressed beyond that, it takes, I do tests. I'll upload 30 pictures on a private account, and I'll just look at them and I'll be like, this one looks better. Let's A/B this one. Now let's go back. I'll upload 10 at a time and just scroll through them and be like, that one looks a little bit better. And it takes this huge amount of time. They could provide that. So I don't have any allegiance. I just want to reach people and have that connection. So
that's a funny point that they don't give you the information. You really got to figure it out for yourself, and that is a painstaking process to go through to figure it out on your own.
It wasn't meant, wasn't meant for us. It just wasn't. It was meant for, selfies and celebrities and things like that. And
it's funny also, when I really started realizing that vertical photos do better on Instagram, for a while I was just posting horizontals because that's all I thought to take. And I caught myself as I got into Instagram more. I started only shooting things vertically, and there are scenes where it definitely should be shot horizontal, like landscape. And I had to kind of be like, all right, take the photo in landscape, it'll be okay. And
that's why I like high resolution cameras.
Yeah,
it's I'm gonna do both. You know what I mean? I'm gonna shoot it a little bit wider, and I'll have that wide one for the print, and I'll have the vertical one to post.
Right.
And if you see my feed, sometimes I do those scrolling ones because I don't want to lose all that detail. I want to take up as much of your phone screen as I can. That's the format you gave me. If you give an artist a big wall and then I just put this little tiny picture in the corner, I'm wasting it. So that's why the vertical photos for me, that's the thing. But sometimes it's, it doesn't fit the format, and photography has historically been horizontal. That's how you do a landscape. So you adjust.
Yeah. And I appreciate when people do the sliding ones. I genuinely slide through all of them. I think it's good to then see oh wow, that's what the picture was intended to look like. Yeah. On a wall.
Yeah. I mean, you look back a few years ago on Instagram, there's no carousel, and you also couldn't zoom either. Like that was a really big deal when that happened. Like you could actually zoom in on a photo and kind of get a little bit of detail. And I'm doing that all the time on the inspirational photos that I see. I'm looking for the details. Like I want to see it all. So it's improved. I guess they did that, at least those things are there now. But I do really like when, seeing that detailed shot first, and then maybe it's whited out to it, just kind of a smaller box on the next one, just to kind of get that idea of what the whole scene was. But
I like that too.
Phone's probably the worst way to ever enjoy like true artwork. So that's where we are. It has its benefits. So
do you just think of Instagram as a tool, like as a kind of like a means to an end?
I don't know. It's provided just a ton of opportunity for me, and to me, Instagram is just the current day. Like, it's a new way to reach people and have your gallery right there with them in a way that just so many people from the past should have had that opportunity to reach those kind of people. Mm-hmm. Like it's amazing to be able to post a photo, and some photos will get seen 10, 20, 30,000 different accounts, or more. And it's just like, that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. I posted a photo and, 30,000 people saw it. That's actual reach for, if you wanted to share your image, if you wanted to, if you're going to put a picture up. And but yeah, it's I will shoot if there's no Instagram. That's right. And at some point there won't be. I mean, it's not at some point that's not going to be there. So I'm not basing my whole enjoyment in photography on that. That has, it's a percentage, but something else will come along. People want art. People want to see these things. I would love if print was growing instead of but I do think there's a brighter day for it coming still. So
I almost think it'll come back in like a nostalgic sense.
Well, yeah, in a lot of ways, but there's people have a need to hold things and see things in person. Yeah. And so I think it's just going to be a purist type thing. There's going to be the most I don't know everything about the print industry. I've been around for a while, and especially with my wife and things that she's worked in that industry. And I can say that, there's a reason that something like Surfer Journal is still valid and still going, and it needs support. And I don't know where it's going to be in a couple of years, but there's a reason is, their journalism is very strong. And their format is very strong, their pages, their layouts, their paper quality. And when you pick up one of those, it feels cool, and you can justify spending like the book. 13 or 15, whatever amount of dollars. I can't remember what it costs retail. But also they're not trying to tell you what happened last week or last month. They're not giving, in general, it's not, you're not going there for up-to-date news, because you can't compete like that anymore. I got a Twitter feed. If I want to know who's, what's happening at Pipeline today, I'll go on and look at surfers literally being like, this is what I just did, or this is what, yesterday or today. I don't need to read about it in Surfer that comes out in 2 months. That isn't valid in some ways, but I think the purists I want to pick up a book. Some people just want to have it in their room. Like it's such a big identifying object. Like I want to have that on my table when someone comes in, so they know, and then
they know what's up.
You pick something up like that, and you could read stories, you could take one of those on a plane and read the whole time. It's journalism, and most of the articles are about things that happen, there's a ton of older stories, or about the development of things that went over 20 years or 30 years. So things like that. I think the purist type stuff like that can exist.
Yeah. And that's really interesting. The note about like if I want to find out what's going on today, like it's really not that hard to figure out. Like if you just follow the right surfers who live in Hawaii, like it'll be on their story, like what's going on.
Yeah. Why would I wait for tomorrow's newspaper?
Right.
If I can read the update tonight. Like,
yeah.
I don't need elections results tomorrow. I don't know. I'm not waiting for that. So
that's funny. But so on a different note, I am also really curious about, because you and your wife started a company recently, which, by the way, my girlfriend loves it. She literally just took it with her. She's like, "Oh, I'm going to use this while I'm in Arizona." Like,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I want to let's talk about that for a little bit.
So my wife is a graphic designer, among many other things, but this is the first time I've probably had any anxiety over. I want to get everything right. Yeah. I don't mind talking about my own stuff, and I'll be long-winded, but I'm like, man, I don't want to misquote something here, but and it's a really big deal to us right now. But I would say I have two children, an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, and when we had our children, she was an art director for a company, for a magazine, and she made a choice to kind of start reeling back as things sped up, and she wanted these were just personal choices we made for us. And a few years down the line, when she was ready, I'd say now, or these past couple of years, she's been ready to get fully back in, and missing that creativity. We're both, we really are both into art and creativity, and it's important to us both. And if you take that away from somebody, it's an emptiness. And so while 2020 really shook the foundation of probably everybody, it kind of provided this time and platform and drive. I don't know. I'm really proud of her for it, but she wanted to make her own bag line, and we live there on Amelia Island, and the sand. I don't want this to be too pitchy, but ultimately it's go for it. It was once you live there, or you live in a beach environment, in a beach town, that the sand's everywhere. I mean, I've got a 1/4 inch of sand in my car at all times, no matter what I do. It's impossible. I mean, my yard's made of sand. It's everywhere. And we're at the beach a lot, and we're teaching our kids how to surf, and I'm always shooting and things like that. So she developed these beach bags. They're splash friendly, basically, and they're all our own designs. And the cool thing is like, there's a lot of platforms out there now, like Zazzle or some of these different places where you can go and like kind of pick a design or pick a photo and have it printed on, something, and have it sent to you, have a t-shirt made or whatever. And I'm not knocking that method at all, but she got into it, the Adobe apps, and built these designs from scratch, from the very first, every single design. And she used all these years of experience in the clothing design industry and things like that. And the cut, the layout, the fabrics, every single thing was done by her. And I really didn't have a whole lot of input until one day there was a bag that was, delivered, and I was like, well, I've seen her working on it. I knew she was doing it. It wasn't like a secret so much, but it was just like, I didn't, there was nobody. She did this 100%. It was, I don't want to say just a COVID project, but it was like this, I'm back thing to get back into art. And, now down the line, we've done a big Kickstarter program, and that went well. And we're in about 10 or 12 retailers in this local East Coast area. And
congrats, by the way. That's awesome.
I appreciate it. It's been awesome. It's been something really cool, because now my reach into the surf industry, and with a lot of shops and things like that, it's helped open some doors. But as far as like retail or just getting people to work with us, or photography and things like that, but but the photography, especially, that's a big deal to me, is like shooting for her. So like content is everything.
Right.
I mean, it's daily, it's never ending. And I've been doing product photography for several different brands for years now. But with this, it's like from the beginning, I'm getting to craft an entire brand, and we're working together on it, which is really cool. We're finally like found this overlapping, continuity.
Two passions, yeah.
So it's pretty neat. And then, so I'm kind of doing a lot of the business mind side of it, and she's doing the creativity, and then I'm getting to capture that creativity in its environment. So that's been really cool. That's been
I'm
super
sure
fun.
That's super fun to be able to like work with your partner and like be able to create something.
I would say that not everybody would say that that's what they wanted, but it's the special thing is to be able to still have my own, what I mean is not everybody doesn't want to work with their significant other
right.
in whatever career field they're in, but we found a way to overlap our two different passions. She could do photography and I like drawing, but they're not the same. If I had to get in InDesign and write my name, it would take me a YouTube video first to try to figure out what was happening. And so she just excels at her thing, and I watch it happen because it's cool. But we both found these overlapping things, and that's what's special to me. So and it's cool, the kids are even like, they're watching it, and my little guy, he'll draw pictures and bring them in for us, and like my daughter will want to take pictures, and so sometimes they'll snap pictures on an iPad or something like that. And like, check it out, we took pictures of the bag. That's pretty cool. So it's been a real blessing to have a whole family thing get together. So 2020, some positive stories there, I guess.
Yeah.
So
what's been the hardest part about creating a brand, and building up a business, because it is just you two, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, how is that?
Again, I don't want to answer too much for her, but it's there's just a lot of unknown, and you've got to. Luckily, we did go with our intention. We went with the Kickstarter program, which was really cool because it was a nice way to get a lot of support from the people that knew us. But beyond that, it started reaching out really quick from there. So that gave us a little bit of startup capital to get moving. And it was a proof of concept. It was like, okay, we sold it to our couple family and friends, but now other people are buying, and beyond that. Right. And it gave us this confidence to go, okay, if we put some money on the line here, the more you order, the better the margin becomes. And if we can put in a bigger order, or if we can start working on, the second line of bags and the third line of bags, we knew that but that's a big mystery. And I think for her, there's always, you're putting your heart out there, really, because you're going, hey, I made a design. You don't know what people are going to do until you put it for sale, until you put it in a store, or until you bring it to a retailer. And so,
well, that's similar to you when you put your photography out.
Yeah. And
at the beginning, especially, you didn't know what your followers or people were going to respond to you. So,
and in photography, I think I would handle rejection better, because I can just dismiss it and go, that's my art, I don't care. But in when you have a retail product, you're like, hey, I designed this for you.
Yeah.
I tried to make something that was missing in on the shelves out there.
Oh, I see.
And so I think the weight's a little bit heavier, because you're like, hey, I made this for you. Okay. Right. I know this fits your life. I know this is going to work for you. Why aren't you accepting that?
Yeah.
And so,
versus art, you kind of create for yourself.
A little bit. And other people enjoy that partially because you're passionate about it. You know what I mean? That's a big thing with my work is, I've reeled back from commercial print shops and things like that, because I want to be involved. I want to see the prints done. I do as many of the prints I can myself. And then larger prints I do through Imagine Fine Art Printing in St. Augustine.
They're great.
And and it's I just want people to see how much it means to me. I don't want something just shipped from a a major warehouse somewhere direct to the customer. I want to see it. I want to check it out. I want to just enjoy it for a moment. If you're ordering a 60-inch print and I don't get to see it, it's like I'm homesick. Like, what? I didn't get to see it. It's gone. It's somewhere, in California. I don't get to see this thing. I want to see it. It does cost me more. I've got to ship it, and I have the stress of getting these things like signed and rolled up perfect. And like, I just lost a couple of really big prints just shipping them across the state. They got stomped on, and it's like that. I chose to make these things my problem. You know what I mean? Right. But it's because I care. I didn't want to just, I'll be the parent that walks all the way to the bus stop. Not against everybody. Not everybody can. I got to be careful. But I'm just saying, like, that's the way with the prints. I'm walking them to the bus stop. I will be there waiting when, because it means a lot. And so that passion matters. So. And
now you can bring, and I think the cool thing also about, since you're able to work on this product together, you're able to bring all these skills you have as a photographer and the product photography, but you can put your own spin on it kind of too, because it's your guys' brand, it's your company. Is that like a nice feeling to?
It is. I mean, it is. We're free. I think designers and product photographers, or a lot of people that work in the for hire / art world where you're creating for somebody else, I think, and I've seen it with my wife forever. I mean, it's you create and you have this amazing thing, and then somebody comes along and goes, let's use this little crappy font here. Yeah. So it's nice to just go, hey, I know what I'm talking about. She knows what she's talking about. Let's make it happen. Let's trust it, and then we'll get the feedback. So that's been enjoyable.
I'm sure. Yeah. And how do you pronounce the name?
I was just going to say, I didn't even say the name.
Yeah. I want to make sure we get that out there.
But it's Marloru. And
where does that name come from? It's very unique.
It has, I won't go into the specifics, but it has importance to a number of important people in Christina's life.
Oh, okay.
So, but it's a name that, we just kind of, you work with your family on things sometimes, and you come up with something, and it's not a specific identity, point that I'm going to point to here, but it's Marloru. It's marloru.com, Marloru Bags on Instagram. Get over there, check them out.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the bio.
I appreciate it. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I think that pretty much covers it.
That's everything. There's nothing else to me.
Yeah.
You've got it all.
Thank you so much for coming down here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I always like getting down here. It's good to be moving around again.
So. Yeah, I'm sure.